You know, folks, these days it seems almost impossible not to notice pain, the hurt, the tears of the people in many parts of our world. Think of the pain of war and the experience, let's say, that you see of war that comes into your living room through television or maybe through your internet screens. People rushing to find shelter from shelling or bombing. Innocent lives trapped in burnt out or collapsed buildings in cities that are all but surrounded. Elderly people without relief, living in the midst of the senseless devastation of war. Or maybe your thoughts go to the pain of natural disasters. Lives and livelihoods are destroyed in raging fires or floods or earthquakes, all beyond our control. The pandemic still causes pain of sickness and the sorrow of losing loved ones and neighbors. Did you see in the news in the last week, the COVID death toll in this country passed 1 million people a few days ago? Everyone at this point must know someone who, say, who knows a family who has faced death or serious illness or maybe a prolonged hospitalization. Then there's the pain of what it means just to try and live simply these days. Daily, people around the world are experiencing a rise in the cost of living that's connected to that perfect storm that's coming out of pandemic on one hand and the widening ripples of war in Europe on the other. The poor struggle, and parents wonder, say, just how to care for their children. As I reflect on these experiences that we're going through right now, I'm reminded of a phrase from, say, that second reading today from the book of Revelation. Time of great distress. John tells us the people are gathered in the presence of God today, and we reflect on, say, those who have survived a time of great distress. They have endured persecution, torment, tribulation, all on account of their faith in this account that John writes to us. The good news is that their survival is no accident. They survived because God sheltered them and protected them. God did not abandon them. God always remembered. And it's important that we remember that in times of trouble, we are always before God. Or rather, God always gathers us into the arms and love of God's presence. In that Revelation reading, John's vision of the multitudes of people before God's throne reveals God's great desire and longing for us. God seeks to satisfy our hungers and quench our thirsts. God desires to protect us from anything that might hurt us. Pause and listen again to God's promise. They will not hunger or thirst anymore, nor will the sun or any heat strike them. God will lead us to springs of life-giving water, and God will wipe away the tears from their eyes. We have heard those promises before. We have felt God wiping the tears from our eyes. These words ring true for us. As you hear these words this morning in the scriptures, I ask you to reflect. Just where is your pain? What hurts have you been carrying in life? What brings you to tears? The pastor of our region, of our network of parishes, Father Jay Atherton, wrote a letter a few weeks ago to reflect on the experiences of the Child Victim Act and abuse against children. When I showed the letter to our trustees, they said, please, let's share it with our people, but also, would I share on this topic too, my feelings? Let me tell you some of my feelings and some of my thoughts on this. First, I feel a deep sense of shame and anger over the actions of my brother priests and some bishops, not just here in our area, but around the country, who have violated the trust that you place in them to care for our community, and especially to care for our young and our vulnerable in our midst. There are those who have abused others, those who have looked the other way, those who have covered up for them. Now, in our country, the thought is people are presumed innocent until proven guilty. Looking back at it, say, have some of my brothers acted naively? Have some acted maliciously? Have some been just sinfully criminal? I'd say yes to all three. For me, the justice system is the place where that all gets worked out. I trust in the justice system to work. And by the way, let me ask you, if you're aware of any situation involving family or neighbors or folks around the corner, and you're concerned about the care and the welfare of vulnerable people or young people, contact law enforcement. Contact law enforcement. It's the right thing to do. In my years as a priest, I've listened to people who've experienced abuse. And you know, I have come to trust in their personal stories. They have shared from the heart, and they've shared with depth and sincerity. I believe we must listen to them. Second, we need healing ourselves, part for the healing who are survivors, and part for us. There are many wounded people in the communities, many wounded people in churches. I'm aware of people who haven't come back to church because of COVID. They're dealing with health problems. They don't feel safe. I know other people who haven't come back to church because they're concerned that the churches haven't done enough to address care for people and to avoid abuse both now and in the future. I respect where both those groups are. It's important we listen to them. There's a lot of healing that needs to be done. And I've been a priest for almost 31 years now. In every parish I have been in over those 3 decades, at one time or another, I've had to chat with folks like you, the parishioners, on this topic because something happened in the community or something's going on around us. Many people legitimately ask, when will this end? I feel for you on that. I'm with you on that. I have nieces and nephews. You have sons and daughters and grandchildren. We share a lot on this. One of the things that Father Jay wrote about was that in his process where he was discerning going to seminary, some of this was going on. He was down in the Philadelphia area at the time, and he was talking about how perhaps he was thinking maybe he shouldn't pursue this invitation to think about priesthood. He was concerned about where the church was and the anger he was feeling about that. I appreciate what he's saying on that. You know, back in that same era, around 2000, early 2000s, I was very angry. I continue to be angry. I was very angry then about the church's response to people who were being abused. I considered leaving the priesthood. Just a parallel with this, I was explaining this to a close friend once. I remembered in my youth an experience where I think it was one of our secretaries of state, member of the president's cabinet, was concerned that the president wasn't doing the right thing. He resigned rather than to continue with certain policies. He resigned out of conscience. I was drawing a parallel to an experience like that. But after having a chance to think and pray about it a bit, I'm still here. Let me tell you why. We're here for him. We're here for the risen Christ. We can experience disappointment in life, but we have to remember why we're here. I know as a priest, from time to time, I've met with people and families, working out some rough spots in families, or couples who want to maybe talk a little bit about difficult moments in their marriage. Sometimes I've heard the phrase, someone say, "When you said that to me, it's like I don't know who you are anymore." Sometimes we feel shaken in the close relationships in which we live, shaken to the point where we really feel we need to make a change. Maybe you know about moments like that. It's time for healing, it's time for reconciliation. It's time for the other way to live together. I had experiences like that. Maybe you have too. My context was, should I continue as a priest? I'm here to stand with you as we turn to the Christ. And that's where I feel we belong. People ask me sometimes, do I feel the church doesn't get enough respect as an institution? Or maybe priests don't get a lot of respect. Let me say this. As your priest, I never feel I deserve respect. I feel the same way for the church too. To me, I believe that respect is earned and renewed each day. It's about how we live in integrity. I seek to live in integrity with Christ and with you. How we live, how we pray, how we love, how we serve together as parish, as families, as community, as a world. This is what I think in terms of. It's how we live in integrity with Christ. And that's what I look to do with you each day. So to me, it's not a matter of having respect, it's earning it each day. And maybe folks who are married understand that because that's what they do each day in their relationship. Yes, they did say yes to each other forever, but it's renewed each day. And that's important. It's refreshing. It's being refreshed by living water. And that's who we are. I think this is also a key to how we think about how we renew and rebuild communities each day. Renew and rebuild families. Renew and rebuild our church. It's about Jesus. It's about you. It's about us. And this is how we live it day by day. The third thing and last thing I want to share on this is that, well, in the midst of all the healing that's going on, I remember many survivors who've been very, very deeply and grievously hurt. The state stepped in. People are filing lawsuits. The church has some responsibility to people who've been grievously hurt. The church has responsibility to us too. Can we care for the people who've been wounded, whether it's at the hand of wrongdoers or at the hands where we need to be just brought together as community again? I look for the day when we can have more healing on both counts. Your pain, your hurt, your tears, they are not alien to God. Like the Good Shepherd in today's gospel, we have a shepherd who knows all the sheep by name. God knows your pain, feels your hurt, sees your tears. For your pain, God promises new life. For your hurts, God promises healing, and for your tears, God wipes away the tears with consolation. Wherever we may find ourselves in our lives, Jesus, the Good Shepherd, desires to shepherd us beyond our tears, beyond our hurts, from death into new life, from darkness into light. The Good Shepherd gives us each day as a day of grace, a time to thrive, not just simply survive, but to thrive, because we are inheritors of God's grace. We are children who share in the baptism. The Spirit is with us, and God clothes us in robes of consolation and comfort and cloaks of healing. In times of distress, God tenderly brings us to springs of living water. And if we need a reminder of just say how much God longs for us and how much God really wants to be with us and to hold us close, just a short phrase from this very short Johannine gospel today. No one can take them out of my hand. My Father, who has given them to me, is greater than all, and no one can take them out of the Father's hand. For the Father and I are one. We look to the day when we will all be one together with the Father, and we look to heal all that has been wounded and ruptured this day and every day in the name of our Christ, the risen one.